My BF, our dog, and I went camping up this Forest Service road in BC, Canada, that I've gone to well over 20 times. Midweek early in the season for most people. We have the place to ourselves. Around dusk, two guys bomb up the road on quads. Had to go past my car to get to the river. We don't think anything of it. About an hour later, one guy left. Other guy is still at the river, so after a bit I go ask if everything is all good with his quad, thinking maybe he ran out of gas and his buddy went to go get more. Dude was very surprised by the fact that there were people there. Had no idea that they went right past my car and our campsite. Apparently his quad was fine, so I head back to our site. We're peacefully making dinner and hear yelling over the sounds of the river. Both of us thought it was odd, but hey, people are weird. He's yelling things like, "Fuck you, you ruined my life," and unintelligible angriness. About an hour of this and we're wondering what the deal is. It's full dark, we've got the campfire going strong and Buddy fires up his quad. We're a little bit higher up than the road, maybe 5 feet, and he stops at the entrance to our site. My BF walks over and Buddy is all, "Oh, there's people here?" and starts asking questions about how many people and how long we've been there for. My BF lies and says there's a few of us and more coming. Smart man. Buddy goes off on his quad past my car, which is parked about 10 feet down the road on the way out. About 10 minutes later, he comes back, past the car, past our site, and has some more strong words with the river. Another half hour of yelling and he gets back on his quad, goes to drive back out and stops right near my car. We're definitely weirded out at this point and didn't want my car trashed. BF takes the hatchet and goes to get something out of the car. Buddy is once again surprised by our presence. Buddy leaves again, but not 20 minutes go by and he's come back. It's about 11 p.m. now. We were drinking, but now are stone cold sober. Buddy stops his quad just below the campsite again. We pretend to ignore his presence and go on with our conversation. I've got 911 dialed on my phone, a hatchet beside my chair, and my hunting knife in my lap, just about to press send when he goes to leave again. I call anyway and let the police know what's been going on, and if they find 2 murdered bodies, it's us. Buddy came back 2 more times, finally left for good around 2 a.m. I don't think we got any sleep that night. I've never been so unnerved in my life, and I do a decent amount of solo camping. Never heard anything back from the police either. Still freaks me out a bit to this day. I used to often spend my summers bouldering with my friends by a relatively large forest that was about an hour and a half away from where I used to live. We used to spend some of the nights camping out there just to save some travel costs and time. Anyway, I think this was roughly like the 3rd or 4th time we were out there camping. My friend had left all her climbing gear and her rucksack just outside her tent, or we definitely think she did anyway. The next morning we found her boots, a few clothes, and all her chalk powder had disappeared. We figured that it could have been completely feasible that she misplaced it. Although we were quite sure that they were next to her tent, we didn't really want to believe that they were stolen. Anyway, we didn't read too much into this and just stupidly said to ourselves that perhaps she had left it by the boulders and some animal took an interest to it. I know it sounds stupid, but it was very reasonable to us at the time. Anyway, fast forward a year, we're at the same spot as usual, sitting by the tents and chilling after having some food. Mind you, it's pitch black out, and only the camp area is lit by the fire. I go somewhere a bit out of sight for a slash, and what do I see? A dude in a full-on ghillie suit laying on his stomach looking right towards our campsite. I kinda stood there frozen as this dude clocks that I've seen him and he just bolts it out of there. I don't know whether the event to the year prior was related to the ghillie guy, but this definitely has stuck to all of us. We haven't been back there since, which is a damn shame. My cousins live in North Dakota, and I spent the winter break there freshman year in college. We were at their friend's house one night, drinking in her basement with some other girls, and it was really late, like 3 a.m. I was falling asleep, so I decided to walk home. They live in a desolate area, with lots of snow, and it gets really cold, especially at night. But the houses weren't too far apart, and when the moon is out, it seems light out. The path we always take is straight behind the house through some wooded areas, then more open land. And as I was shuffling home through the snow with my head down, I look up and to the left, my 10 o'clock and probably like 75 yards away, is another figure walking in the opposite direction. I saw him a split second before he saw me, and when he did, he kind of jerked his arms and shoulders up a little, obviously startled from the sight of me as I was with him. I laughed out loud for some reason, just from the shock or something. and gave him a little wave like, "Oh, you startled me, haha, sorry" kind of thing. He just stood there and stared at me. I thought he was going to say something for a second, and so I was stopped too, just looking at him. He had a full-face ski mask on, and I could tell it was a dude because he was really tall. But he didn't say anything. So for what felt like forever, it's just me and some stranger in a ski mask, looking at each other in the desolate woods, in the middle of winter, at 3 a.m. A huge chill went up my spine and a voice said, "You need to get the fuck out of here, right now." I turned and started walking as fast as I could home. I have never been that scared in my life. I was a little drunk, stoned, and very paranoid. I imagined me walking home from the opposite perspective, and the man is running up from behind with an axe. So I literally just screamed and started sprinting as fast as I could all the way home, thinking that this guy could easily follow my tracks in the snow, and I'm gonna get murdered. Luckily I didn't, but I don't think I'll be visiting them again anytime soon. I'm not sure it counts as another human being because we didn't positively identify anyone, but a few years ago my friend and I were staying in a small cabin my dad had on a remote piece of land in the Idaho wilderness. The nearest town was probably 50 miles away, and the nearest active road that wasn't an old logging road was about 2 miles from the cabin. My friend and I had been beasing and laughing in the cabin in our bunks, and it was about midnight. We had turned off the lantern and were trying to fall asleep when we heard something that sounded like something had scraped the door. We both lifted our heads up and mumbled a conversation of, "Did you hear something?" "Yeah, haha." Then, in the middle of nowhere in this remote cabin, someone starts knocking on the door. Doesn't say anything, just knocks. We were both in our 30s, but we were so scared shitless that we didn't say anything. Just lay there with our heads up staring at the door. We didn't go out until it was light out again, and there was nothing near the door that would have tapped against it, and no animal tracks. It freaks me out even thinking about it. In college, I lived near the edge of the city, and there was this road nearby that winded through some forest before opening up to some farms. It was rarely used by cars, and people avoided walking there because there were no sidewalks, and it went nowhere. Halfway down the road was this abandoned property that had apple trees that produced a ton of fruit that always ended up on the ground. One evening, just after sunset, I passed the property on my way back from a run, so I picked my way into the brambles to grab some apples. After I got a couple, I circled back around some bushes to head home, and right in the path was this middle-aged man creeping towards me with his hands spread like he was hunting something, and I fucking lost it. I screamed and kind of flailed my arms so the apples flung towards him. He also jumped and went, "Oh no, sorry, I thought you were a deer," and backed up into the road. He was super embarrassed and apologetic, and I was way too happy to not be getting murdered to get mad. But holy crap, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Once upon a time, my friends and I embarked on an exhilarating midnight adventure in the deep, dark forest that surrounded our small town. The moon cast an eerie glow over the towering trees, creating dancing shadows that seemed to come alive with each gust of wind. Excitement and nervousness mingled within us as we stepped into the unknown. The forest had always fascinated us with its mysteries and whispered tales of ancient spirits. As we walked further, our laughter slowly subsided, and a sense of awe settled over us. The silence of the night was broken only by the soft rustling of leaves under our feet. As we wandered deeper into the forest, the air grew thick with anticipation. We exchanged ghost stories, half-jokingly trying to scare each other. But little did we know that something more sinister lurked in the darkness. Suddenly, a chilling breeze swept through the forest, and we felt a sense of being watched. Our laughter faded, and we huddled closer, seeking comfort in each other's presence. The moonlight seemed to dim, and an oppressive feeling weighed on our shoulders. We continued our journey, guided by the pale moonlight, but an eerie unease gnawed at our senses. Strange noises echoed through the trees, and we couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. It was then that we heard it, a haunting melody carried on the wind, like a mournful song from another world. Our hearts pounded in our chests as we turned to find the source of the haunting music. But what we saw sent shivers down our spines. A group of figures emerged from the shadows, their forms contorted and unnatural. They moved with a graceful yet unsettling gait, gliding through the forest like specters. our breath caught in our throats as we realized what we were facing. Skinwalkers. Terrified, we stumbled back, knowing the ancient legends of these malevolent beings who could take on the appearance of animals or humans. Their eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and we felt their sinister gaze upon us. Frozen with fear, we didn't know what to do. The forest that had once seemed inviting now felt like a labyrinth of darkness and danger. Panic threatened to overwhelm us, but we knew we had to stay calm and think fast. As the skinwalkers approached, we slowly backed away, trying to put as much distance between us and the mysterious beings. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, hoping to call for help. But to our dismay, there was no signal in the heart of the forest. In a desperate bid to escape, we ran through the trees, branches scratching against our skin, and the haunting melody echoing behind us. We didn't dare look back, fearing that the skinwalkers were still pursuing us. Finally, we emerged from the forest, gasping for breath and covered in sweat. We huddled together, trying to make sense of the nightmarish encounter we had just endured. From that day on, the midnight forest adventure became a haunting memory for us. We were forever changed by the chilling encounter with the skinwalkers. The ancient legends of the forest had come alive that night, leaving us with a profound respect for the mysteries that lie within the darkness. And though we vowed never to venture into the forest at midnight again, the memory of that eerie night would stay with us, a reminder that the world is filled with wonders and dangers that we may never fully understand. A trail I like backpacking in an isolated area of Pennsylvania was the setting for this odd encounter. The trail has a short section that goes over someone's cabin property and continues on the other side of his yard. It's marked with an orange blaze so you can see where to go. Usually it's an empty cabin. I always do some peering inside since it's in a pretty secluded spot, probably 4 or 5 miles from a major road. One time I was hiking through and there is a large dude grilling outside with about 15 Bud Light cans on the ground around him. I distinctly remember him saying, "Keep it moving, no food here," which I thought was funny since I didn't say anything about needing food. Fast forward the following year and I decide to take my sister, my wife, and her best friend on a trip that takes us through this very spot. As we are walking up on it, I see the dude is there again, which is odd, since I've hiked the trail 100 times and this is only twice I've seen him. He is grilling again, beer cans everywhere. I see him start to give the keep it moving signal until he sees who I am with. Now the girls I'm traveling with are attractive, so I'm nervous all of a sudden. He asks us to stay for dinner, says he has plenty of extra food. I tell him no, we are good, just trying to enjoy the trail away from the comforts of home. He gets weirdly pushy about us staying and I firmly say no thanks and we are just passing through. I hear the dude mumble to himself as we continue past his house. This is where things get weird. There is a prominent camping spot not far from this section of trail, and it's late in my head I want to keep going because I don't want to camp near this asshole. The consensus is everyone is pretty tired, so we set up camp. I'm nervous the whole time thinking this drunk dude knows there are 3 women camping in tents near his cabin. I never get nervous around folk I see on the trail because everyone is usually very nice and wonderful to talk to. This guy just felt off to me though. Fast forward to the middle of the night, and sure enough I hear someone on the trail outside the tent. I'm just praying it's a bear at this point, but I hear the dude mumbling to himself and I panic. I hear him now in the camp. He's going through our shit and is piss drunk. Fuck. Okay, think. I realize I have a blowhorn on my pack I use on the trail to scare animals off should I encounter any. So I unzip the tent slowly and roll out. Dude is fumbling around and it's scary as hell because it's the middle of the darkness in the middle of nowhere. I start to run towards him and blow my air horn repeatedly and it's loud as shit. Everyone in their tents starts screaming. The dude nearly shits his pants and starts bumbling the fuck out of there. Everyone is so shooken up at this point we pack up and night hike out of there. Worst experience I've ever had. Sarah, Mark, and I set out on an adventure into the dark forest that loomed at the edge of our town on a rainy Saturday. As we moved farther in, the air became painful, the daylight seemed to fade, and we were surrounded by shadows. The woods seemed to be whispering tales of long-forgotten horrors as they added to the eerie symphony with their cracked branches and rustling leaves. Sarah's chuckle faded away, giving way to an uncomfortable silence. Mark and I looked at each other anxiously as we both felt that something wasn't right. We came across a clearing as we were exploring it, but this time there were no colorful wildflowers to welcome us. Unnatural stillness hung strongly in the air. I felt a chill run down my spine as Old Man Isaac's recognizable voice abruptly broke the silence. He gave a sinister grin and said, "Welcome to the Cursed Grove. Only those with darkness in their hearts dare to enter this place." Sarah tried to keep her cool while Mark and I exchanged alarmed looks. The once beautiful clearing seemed to take on an unsettling aura in the presence of Old Man Isaac. The shadows seemed to become bolder throughout the day, changing the trees into bizarre forms. The forest seemed to be watching our every move like a living thing. Our minds were filled with fear as a result of Old Man Isaac's words. Suddenly, a haunting melody appeared out of nowhere, just like in horror movies when something is about to happen, sending chills up and down our spines. We looked in the direction of the unsettling sound and found a mysterious shadow. The apparition appeared to float above the earth as the eyes glowed red, looking straight through us. I retreated out of instinct as Sarah clung to Mark, my heart racing. The apparition's alluring exterior disappeared, revealing a menacing grin that made us shudder. Suddenly, we heard an eerie, cold voice say, "Your hearts may be pure, but this forest hungers for souls." We felt a wave of fear come over us as we understood this otherworldly being for what it truly was. Our expedition had become a nightmare encounter as we were being held captive by evil spirits. We tried to run, hearts racing, but the forest seemed to shift and stop us. The sound of the Guardian's laughter echoed through the trees, serving as a sinister reminder of the peril we were in. The haunted forest seemed to be closing in on us as we ran frantically, crashing through the brush in an effort to escape. We were followed by the haunting melody, which followed us everywhere. Then, panting for air, we suddenly burst from the forest. For fear of what might be hiding in the shadows, we decided not to turn around. We had been affected by the cursed grove, and the expedition had left us with unsettling memories that would never leave us. We avoided the dark forest after that day because the horrors we had witnessed had changed us for good. Although Old Man Isaac and the evil spirit were never seen again, the eerie presence of the cursed grove remained in our memories as a chilling reminder of the evil that inhabited the forest's interior. My stomach was filled with a mixture of curiosity and fear as I stood at the edge of the Aokigahara Japanese suicide forest. The forest was immersed in sinister silence, and I could feel the weight of its dark past pressing down on me. My friends and I had made the decision to explore this mysterious location, but I couldn't get rid of the ominous feeling that filled the atmosphere. We entered the forest further with our flashlights in hand. The sunlight was blocked by the canopy above, and we were surrounded by dancing shadows. The ground was blanketed in fallen leaves, muffling our footsteps and giving the impression that we were invading a sacred area. Due to its reputation for being a suicide hotspot, the forest was eerie, and a sense of tragedy pervaded the atmosphere. I couldn't help but think about the souls who had given up hope in this place. We began to feel more closely observed as we moved forward. We looked at each other uneasily as we jumped at the slightest sound of the leaves. We tried to dismiss our unease as anxiety, but the forest seemed to have a mind of its own, as if it was silently watching our every move. The only sound was the occasional hoot of an owl, which sent shivers down our spines. I tried to talk to my friends to keep my mind off of things, but the overwhelming past of the forest made it hard to focus. We discovered colored ribbons tied to trees, marking the paths taken by earlier explorers, as we moved deeper into Aokigahara. I was overcome by emotion at the sight, and I couldn't help but reflect on the spirits who had passed on before us and left behind these beautiful markers of their presence. It felt like we had been walking for hours as time seemed to drag. As the forest's darkness closed in on us, our group started to feel increasingly alone. I couldn't get rid of the feeling that we were unwanted guests in this solemn place. Aokigahara is a place of haunting beauty, but also great sadness and loss. I was aware that I would never forget the sense of history's weight and the ghosts of those who had gone before us watching over us. The Japanese suicide forest will always be a place of fascination and anguish, a reminder of the frailty of the human spirit and the value of seeking comfort and hope when things are dark. I feel late to the party, but this story seems relevant. A friend and I were scoping out an area for hiking because we were both new to the area. It was probably 6 p.m. but pitch black because it was the dead middle of winter when it gets dark at 4 p.m. We drove down a dead-end dirt road to try to find a trailhead we had heard about. The road is probably only 3 miles long, and we don't see anything on our way down. We get to the dead end and turn around to head back out to the main road. About halfway from the dead end to the main road, we see a man standing at the edge of the road in tattered clothes and covered in dirt, carrying a shovel, staring us down. My friend and I both held our breath until we were back in town and asked each other if we saw the same thing. I was on my wife's family's ranch, which is about 1,000 acres. I was scouting deer as it was deer season. I had my rifle slung on my back as I was walking through the woods. As I walk out of the woods onto one of our 2 dirt roads into the property, I saw 2 strangers sitting on the back bed of their white pickup truck. They had rifles in their hands. I approached them with a friendly wave. As I approached them, I kept my rifle slung on my back so to not threaten them. I asked them how they are doing and what are they hunting. They said they were doing fine and looking for deer. I then noticed 6 or 7 beer cans on the ground. They asked me the same thing, and I told them that I was good in scouting deer as well. Here comes the hard part. I asked them how they got onto the property. They began to mumble and asked me the same question. I politely told them that my wife's family owns the property. I then told them that they should leave. I told them to have a great day and started walking backwards. After about 20 yards, I turn around and start walking very briskly. I heard 1 shot in my direction. I hit the ground behind a bush and another shot rings out. I hear that whiz. I immediately position myself to fire on them. I see one guy packing up his gun into the back bed of the truck. I take aim at his right leg and fire. I get up and start running into the woods. I hear screaming. After 20 minutes, I get back to my Tahoe and call the game warden and local sheriff. They come out after about 30 minutes and these poachers were gone. I told them all the details and descriptions and said I think I shot one in the leg. Next day, I get a call from the sheriff saying they had a guy in the local ER with a GSW to the leg. He sent me a pic via text. It was the guy I shot. He survived and got 4 years in prison because this was his first felony. They never found the other guy. A few years ago, a girlfriend and I lived in an apartment complex near some woods and a lake. I would occasionally take my banjo, Illy, out to this boards on wires with a tarp hut I found in the woods. Mostly kids used it to smoke pot, but it was also great to get some real down south picking going on. Anyway, I'm out there one night, I'm a fucking idiot, practicing chords or whatever, I still suck at it. Cuestics breaking, people shouting, and distant slivers of light shining through the hut's boards, so you know I ignore it as it all comes closer. A few moments later, one of them comes in. He seems a little hazy. "Are you the architect?" "No, I'm not." His friend waltzes in, machete in hand, telling me he is on LSD. I play real chill as he and like 4 other friends come in and sit down next to me. They start telling me how euphoric they feel, how the banjo playing was euphoric. I guess Britney Spears on banjo should have that effect, and how he brought his machete in case there were crazy woods people. Anyway, my then girlfriend calls. I calmly tell her I met some friends. She asked if they were high and if I was high, when one of them shouted that they were on LSD. Girlfriend wanted me to come home right away. I told her I would be soon. Really, I just didn't want to immediately upset they machete wankers just in case. Eventually, I tell them I need to get home to my girlfriend. Bonus story. I get to the apartment and get chewed out for not coming right home after she got off work. Telling her I was trying to be careful around machete LSD wankers and was trying to not die didn't matter because she was a narcissist like her then dying dad. I was hitchhiking in Greece, got dropped off at a crucial fork in the road for my journey in the middle of the night by a super nice guy. He was going the other way. Had to camp for the night in the middle of nowhere and start again in the morning. His were the only headlights I saw from getting out of his vehicle to walking a half mile into the woods. I set up camp, had some whiskey, and started to doze off. Before I could, I heard footsteps coming toward me. I am freaking out. I hear someone right outside of my tent. I yell I have a weapon, and start to open the tent, and they bolt. I see a figure running back towards the road. I closed the tent and stayed awake for 8 hours until the sun came up, fighting a sleep-deprived, drunken sleepiness the whole night. It was the worst night of my life, but I never saw whoever it was again. I camped in Northern California with a couple friends for 3 months straight in 2012. We're talking way out in the wilderness. The whole trip was a great success until we were heading south again. We set up camp a few miles outside of a tiny town as it was getting dark. The only things in this town were one long road, a gas station, a post office, and a bar. In the middle of the night, we hear screaming in the distance. We could discern 3 different voices, but they were far enough away we couldn't quite make out what was being said. All of a sudden, we hear a single gunshot, followed by absolute silence. I opened my tent and looked over at my friends who were looking back at me. None of us said a word. We laid back down and tried to sleep. Scariest night of my life. A lot of people wonder if we reported this to police. What police? You need to understand that in this area, one sheriff patrols 3 counties. That's it. This area of Cali is what Sons of Anarchy was based on. I know that was TV and was dramatized, but there is some truth to what goes on in these areas. The sheriff is most likely in the pockets of the drug runners. It is in your best interest to put your head down and mind your own damn business unless you want to be next. We were kids with no resources, backpacks and tents, hitchhiking through the NW. It would have been so easy to make us disappear next. I stepped foot on Mexico's eerie island of dead dolls, which is hidden in the ocean. The dolls, which were suspended from trees, had lifeless eyes that haunted me. The dolls appeared to be moving as I continued on my journey, their heads turning to follow every step I took. I carefully circled the area while testing the dolls' responses because I was fascinated by their peculiar behavior. More dolls turned their heads with each step as if they were watching everything I did. They seemed to be trying to get my attention by sharing their long-forgotten tales with me. Despite my fear, I found it difficult to look away from the fascinating scene. The island had a mysterious aura that drew me further into its mysteries. The dolls' twisted limbs seemed to be calling out to me, urging me to fully understand their tragic past. The eerie atmosphere of the island was further amplified by the wind's eerie melodies whispered through the trees. The movements of the dolls grew more prominent, and I experienced a conflicting sense of fascination and unease. The dead souls that were imprisoned inside the lifeless doll bodies gave the island a living spiritual quality. In the course of my investigation, I discovered that some dolls were holding toys or fabric scraps, as if they were prized possessions from previous owners. It appeared as though the dolls were clinging to their past and fond memories of happier times. The island's caretaker told stories of the dolls and related the tragic accounts of the young girl who had perished in the nearby waters. He explained that the dolls were intended to placate the ghosts and keep the island safe from additional tragedy. The dolls' eerie gazes followed me as I departed the island of dead dolls, and I will never forget their movements. I was mesmerized and disturbed by the experience, which made me deeply respectful of the tragic tales that infests the island. I came across a forgotten path that took me to a World War II cemetery one cloudy afternoon as I was strolling through the peaceful forest. The sorrowful grounds were shrouded in an unnerving silence as the weight of history filled the air. I felt like I was constantly being watched as I made my way deeper into the cemetery. My skin prickled with goosebumps, and I couldn't get rid of the feeling that someone was watching me at all times. Though I made an effort to convince myself that it was all in my head, the sensation persisted and grew stronger with each step. As the trees above me cast ominous shadows on the graves, the forest seemed to close in around me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my breath became more rapid. The only sound that broke the eerie silence was the gentle rustling of leaves, but I couldn't get rid of the sense that I wasn't alone. I spotted a faded old photo on a weathered tombstone as I got closer to it. A young soldier in uniform was shown, his smile concealing the suffering and trauma he must have experienced during the conflict. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized he was staring at me in the photograph, his eyes seemingly following my every move. Even though I made an effort to avert my eyes, I was restrained by an invisible force. I couldn't shake the feeling that the spirits of those buried here were watching me, silently guarding their final resting place, as the air around me seemed to thicken with an unspoken presence. The faint echoes of the past drifted through the trees on a gentle breeze. However, the sense of being watched never went away, and the forest appeared to be filled with the ghostly whispers of the dead. The shadows grew longer as the light faded, dancing like spectral figures among the tombstones. I made the decision to leave as my chest pounded and my heart raced. I shivered as I turned to leave and felt a soft touch on my shoulder. A faint, sinister voice seemed to whisper in my ear, "Thank you for coming. We never lose sight of those who recall us." As I hurried out of the cemetery, I felt a mixture of relief and misery. The feeling of being watched remained, leaving me with a deep respect for the souls buried there. I set out on a journey into the heart of Germany's Black Forest, a region filled with legends and mysteries. The forest felt calm with secrets just waiting to be found as I made my way through the old trees. Surreal shadows were cast on the forest floor by the sunlight as it filtered through the trees. The trees appeared to be moving, with their branches swaying in perfect harmony. As I dug deeper and noticed something strange, they appeared to be moving to a captivating, hypnotic melody. Although I couldn't believe what I was seeing, I couldn't take my eyes off the scene. I felt a bond with the old trees, and that the forest had a life of its own. The forest seemed to sense my presence as I walked on and led me along an unmarked path. It appeared as though the forest spirits were welcoming me to their world. I thought the trees were trying to communicate with me when I heard flimsy whispers carried by the wind. The feeling of being watched and the ethereal sounds, though in a language I couldn't understand, added to the Black Forest's mystique. The forest created an even more magical atmosphere as the day went on. With their dark trunks reaching up to the sky, the trees stood like imposing protection. I felt humbled by the presence of such timeless beauty, and the air was thick with a sense of antiquity. A spectral being shrouded in mist appeared out of nowhere, a mysterious figure. It appeared to be a protector of the forest, keeping an eye on its mysteries. I felt a mixture of awe and fear, and I dared not move as the figure got closer. I was taken aback when the figure smiled, and I felt comforted. It seemed as though the forest had chosen to tell me its secrets, an honor I couldn't fully comprehend. Along the way, I came across an old stone ruin whose deteriorating walls served as a reminder of the passage of time. I found antiquated writings and symbols within its walls that referred to lost tales and rituals from long ago. I felt like a witness to history itself as the forest seemed to resonate with historical whispers. I couldn't help but be enthralled by the Black Forest's rich tapestry of tales, which contained legends and folklore, tales of heroes and villains. I had a sense of adoration and joy as I left the Black Forest. The encounter had been both enchanting and haunting, giving me a fresh appreciation for the natural world's mysteries. The Black Forest had revealed a realm of charm and magic, where the trees appeared to dance, and the ghosts of the past prowled the shadows. It was a realm where timeless beauty and prodigious knowledge coexisted.